Okay, welcome to step one of Start a Business in One Day video course. So I hope you enjoyed the introduction. I went into a lot of things pertaining to passions, purpose, curiosity, and flow. So if you didn't watch it, go back because it really sets up this step very well. And this will make a lot more sense if you've gone through that. So how do you find your passions? This is one thing that I wish I knew earlier in life, and just understanding yourself and really just figuring out and sitting down and going through exercises to figure this out. So the one exercise that I highlight in the PDF is basically you write down as many things that light you up, bring you joy. You love doing them. They're exciting or challenging, and you just really love doing them. So I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to write down a few that I like to do, so you kind of get the hang of this, because for some people it might be unclear on how to exactly do it and what the process is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down a few things and then I'll go through the process. Some of these are things that I actually like, but I'm just going to kind of write down some things that come to mind right now. So I'm just going to, and you can just, I'll start with, I'll number them. So I really want you to write down more than 10. So the goal of this is to get to 5 ultimate passions, which you'll want to integrate in your life and not just follow one. Because if you follow one, you're probably going to get bored with it. So you really want as many as possible and then integrate those. Okay, so I'm just going to start reading, having good conversations, let's see, traveling, golf, hiking, thinking of new ideas, let's see, basketball, and then let's just continue it over here, writing, listening to podcasts, and movies. Okay, so you want to just continue and just write, just sit down with a sheet of paper and just write out. If you've printed out the PDF, which I highly suggest you do, turn it over and just write down as many possible things that you like to do. Okay, so now the exercise begins where you now compare them to each other so that you end up with your top 5. Okay, so reading with having good conversations. So let's say I like having good conversations more than reading. So now I'm just going to I'm not going to cross it out. I'm just going to put a little mark here. So I'll just put 1 dash. So now having good conversations versus traveling. I like traveling more. So I'm going to go with that. And now traveling is going to be above these two. Traveling versus golf. I still like traveling more than golf, so now I'm going to do traveling and hiking. So I like traveling more than hiking too, so let's do that. Thinking of new ideas. Now, do I like thinking of new ideas more than traveling? Does that light me up more? Am I more passionate about thinking of new ideas than I am traveling? Am I more myself when I'm thinking of new ideas, and am I in flow? So I would say, I might be in flow more when I'm thinking of new ideas. So I'll now put a little mark on traveling, and now thinking of new ideas is my new number one. So, and then I compare with basketball. I like that more than basketball. More than writing? Yes, more than writing. Do I like thinking of new ideas more than listening to podcasts? Yes, I would say so. I'll just put the mark over there. And then movies, I would say that for sure. So now this is my number one. So I'm gonna put a number one here. And that's one of my 5. Okay, so then you go through it again. Okay, so reading versus having good conversations. We already did this, so reading again. And then having good conversations versus traveling. And then I chose traveling. Same thing with golf. So I picked this over golf, and that as well, and that over hiking. And now it's traveling versus basketball. So I like traveling more than basketball. And then this is gone. So now this is, you don't even consider this. You've already chosen it. So traveling versus basketball. And I would choose traveling. So now you do traveling versus writing. And I would pick, traveling again. And traveling versus listening to podcasts. Which one lights me up more? Which one do I enjoy doing more? I would say probably, and the thing is too, you want to think of, again, what puts you in flow and where does time go by. So, I mean, when you're traveling, there's a lot of things going on, so you lose track of time a lot. And podcast is more of just like learning things. So I would probably choose traveling. So I'm gonna do that again. Boom. And then that over movies too. So now traveling is my number 2. So I'm just going through this example just to show you guys my thought process whenever I sit down and do this stuff. And when I do it, I write down a bunch of things. And the key is to do this multiple times a year. You really want to, it's a dynamic process. Your passions are always changing. Maybe your purpose is more of like one core thing that might be a bunch of your passions mixed together, okay? So your passions are constantly changing. You're constantly learning more and more about yourself, just like I am. So I'm just kind of showing you how I go through this process. And then you can add more passions as you go. So now let's go back to the top and do reading, having conversations. I chose this over reading again. And now having good conversations versus golf. I would choose having conversations over hiking as well. Don't worry about this one. Traveling's now out as well. Having good conversations over basketball. Having conversations over writing, yes. Over listening to podcasts, yes. I like talking to actual people. And then over movies for sure. So now having good conversations is my 3rd. And now we do reading versus golf. So I would choose reading. Then it's reading versus hiking. I would probably choose reading again. So now it's reading versus basketball. I would choose reading. Reading versus writing. I would go reading again. Now it's reading versus listening to podcasts. I would probably prefer to listen to podcasts or audiobooks over reading. So I would mark this. And then listening to podcasts now over movies. And I would choose listening to podcasts. So listening to podcasts is my 4th. And then now we go back through it. And since I kind of have already done this and reading was there, I've already gone through all these. And then it really would just be reading versus movies, and I would choose reading again. So reading would be my 5th. And this is the process for doing it. This is the process that my mentor, Dallas Michael Sear, told me about, and he got it from the book, The Passion Test. So you'll see obviously you've seen at the bottom of the PDF, you'll see a link to go and learn about my mentor's coaching program, which I went through, and it really, really got me aligned and clear with my business and just with myself in general. So it's really important to focus on these things and get them right, so you don't have to go back 10, 20 years down the road and revisit yourself and figure out who you actually are. So definitely check out that. Definitely check out the book, and hopefully this stuff is clear to you. Definitely keep going through this. If it doesn't seem right the first time, if it's not like super aligned with you, just start again. Just do it again. Write down, like, throw the paper away. Start fresh, write down, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 things that you like doing, and go through this process till you have 5 things that are really, really aligned and true with yourself. Then once you have these 5 things, what you want to do is you want to integrate them the best way that you can. So how can you get all of these in your life at once and make a business out of it? So what you want to do is you want to start with your first one. So thinking of new ideas. Okay, you can't necessarily start a business just around that. You need other things, because thinking of new ideas, that's great for coming up with business ideas, and you can be an inventor, you can do a lot of other things. But you want to, if you're just thinking of new ideas all day long, you're gonna get bored, or you're gonna go crazy probably. So you want to include other things into it. So number 2 would be traveling. So it'd be, okay, I'm thinking of new ideas as I'm traveling, which sounds awesome, but now how can I turn that into a business industry and model? You know what I mean? So the next thing is having good conversations. Okay, so how can I, think of new ideas, travel, and have good conversations? And then, you want to look at the other 2. So it's listening to podcasts. Well, maybe I can just start my own podcast, because that involves having good conversations. And now maybe I make the podcast about new ideas and traveling, and then that's the podcast, and it integrates those 2. And then reading, reading is something that you can do and study existing podcasts. So the reading is something that you can do while you're traveling and while you're making the podcast. And that's a really easy way to integrate all 5 of these into one business model, which I'm going to go over in the next step. So step 2 is going to be on industry and model, but here's the process for turning passions into models. And I'll do another example in step 2 on this, but you can see how going from one thing to number 2 and then number 3, and now we start to have some traction, because podcast comes up, and that relates really well with having good conversations, and traveling and thinking new ideas can be what the topic of the podcast is, and then reading can just be integrated in that as well. So it's not just picking one passion, it's integrating them all together to now have a purpose, to have curiosity, and to get in that state of flow. Okay, so I hope you really enjoyed this. First step, you've now gone through the introduction in step 1. So you've now taken a couple steps. You're leveling up, and you should be thanking yourself, because you've gone through this now. You're starting your path to wherever it is that you're trying to go, and now you're on that. You're in the community. I hope you're checking everything out. There's a lot going on in here, and we're constantly adding new things. So I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, let us know, and then check out step 2, because I'm going to dive into business industries and models a lot more. So thanks for checking this one out.